Page 84, Chapter 14, The Furnace Monster. To Zinkoff, there is not one darkness, but many. There is the dark in the closet, and the dark under the bed, and the dark he can never see. The dark inside a drawer. No matter how fast he opens a drawer trying to catch the dark, the light pours in faster. There is the dark of outside, and the dark of inside. Unlike most children, Zinkoff is not afraid of the dark. Outside darkness does not frighten him. His father has told him that the stars are faraway suns, and the thought of all those suns up there gives Zinkoff a warm and cozy feeling at night. Inside, he seems to carry his own sunshine with him. He's a sunshine bottle, even into the closet, where sometimes he hides from Polly without a twinge of fear. In one respect, however, he is like almost all children. He fears the darkness of the cellar. And even then, it isn't strictly the darkness that he fears, it's what dwells in the darkness, the furnace monster. Like most furnace monsters, Zinkoff stays out of sight behind the furnace when people are around. It's when the people leave, when the light goes off and the door at the top of the stairs closes. In that purest darkness, that's when the monster comes out from behind the furnace. To be in the cellar then, this is the most terrifying thing Zinkoff can imagine. This will be his test. Perhaps if Zinkoff had not had 2 weeks to build up a good head of boredom, taking the test would not have occurred to him. But he is bored, and it does occur to him. And for Zinkoff, that is that. If it occurs to him, he does it. One day, while his mother is on the phone and Polly is napping, he opens the door in the kitchen and stands at the head of the cellar stairs. He turns on the light. The cellar appears dimly below him, lit only by a bare 40-watt bulb. He counts the number of steps. There are 9. To his eyes, they look like 900. 900 steps into a bottomless black hole. Knees trembling, one sweaty hand on the railing, the other flat against the wall, he lowers himself 1 step. He's breathing fast, as if he's been running. He sits down. He sits for a long time. He has thought that after a while he would begin to feel better, but he doesn't. He doesn't want to lower himself 1 more inch. He wants only one thing in this world, to turn around, take 1 step back up, turn out the light, re-enter the kitchen, close the door, and go curl up with Polly. He imagines himself doing exactly that. And lowers himself down to the next step. More of the cellar comes into view. The cold, gray, cracked concrete floor. The once whitewashed walls, now gray and streaked with green slime. Gashed and oozing sand. The coarse, time-worn planks of his father's workbench. The modern geometry of the oil furnace and water heater seem out of place in this crumbling pit that reminds Zinkoff of ancient ruins. He lowers himself another step and thinks he glimpses the furry edge of a flank pulling itself out of sight. He grips the front edge of the step with both hands. He stares bug-eyed into the shadows. The monster speaks. Zinkoff bolts back up the stairs and into the kitchen, into its glorious familiar light, the stitches in his stomach tingling. He knows it wasn't really the monster. It was really the oil furnace kicking on with a whoosh. He knows it. He knows it. Nevertheless, he doesn't go near the cellar door. Until the next day. The next day, he goes down 3 more steps. He is truly down into the cellar now, closer to the gray stone floor than to the top of the stairs. He looks back up at the light from the kitchen. He repeats to himself, "It's only a cellar. It's only a cellar." His heart is banging to get out. His stitches tingle. Beyond the hum of the furnace, he can hear his mother's voice. She is on the phone a lot these days. She has gotten a job as a telemarketer. She sells memberships to a health club over the phone. He whispers in the direction of the furnace, "Please don't come out." There is one other sound, the tock-tock of his mother's cooking timer. He has set it at 5 minutes and brought it with him. It sits on the step beside him. It sounds like the thunder of a kettle drum. He has just decided the timer is broken when it goes off with a fire bell clang. He yelps back to the kitchen. On the third day, he leaves the timer behind. He lowers himself step by step until his feet rest on the cold cellar floor. He starts counting, whispering the numbers. He will stay until he reaches 100. It is noticeably cooler down here. Above him, a slurry of light barely leaks from the 40-watt bulb, mocking the sun and stars he loves. A smear of light puddles at the far corner of the furnace. At last he reaches 100 and returns to the kitchen. He tries to feel good, to congratulate himself for what he has accomplished, but he cannot fool himself. He cannot forget that the test is not over. The next day, he returns to the doctor's office to get his stitches out. Then comes the weekend. He resumes the test on Monday. He does the same thing he did the first day. He lowers himself down 3 steps. Only this time, there is one difference. He does not turn on the light. This time, the only light reaching the cellar comes from the doorway at the top of the stairs. He begins counting. How he wishes for the puny light from the 40-watt bulb. He holds up his hand. He stares at the backs of his fingers, anchors himself to the sight of them. His stitches are gone now, but the scar they left behind tingles on. By the time he reaches 100, the fingers he's staring at are shaking. He clambers up the stairs. Next day, down 6 steps, more than halfway. The hand before his face less clear now. He finds himself counting too fast, makes himself slow down. It takes forever to reach 100. When he descends to the bottom step next day, the hand he holds up is pale and ghostly. It does not seem to be his. He forces himself to stare into the blackness before him. He counts a new way. The light is right behind me. 5. The light is right behind me. 10. The light is right behind me. 15. Some of the counts come out as burps. He burps a lot since the operation. By the end, he's screaming, "The light is right behind me, 100!" He flies up the stairs. His mother comes running. "What happened?" "Nothing," he says. "Why were you screaming? Why are you breathing so hard?" "I am?" She takes his chin in her hand and tilts his face upward. "I think we'll both be glad when you go back to school." Back to the sofa. As usual, Zinkoff is first up next morning. He is so nervous. He's burping even more than usual. He can hardly get his breakfast down. Hard as the darkness test has been so far, the worst is yet to come. He waits for his father to leave for work. He waits for his mother to begin her telemarketing phone calls. He peers into the living room. The alarm is in her playpen, guarding the front door. For a long time, he sits alone in the kitchen, feeling the light, soaking it up, imagining himself a light sponge. Never before has he so appreciated the mere sight of common things. The silvery sides of the toaster and its tiny pinched reflections, the plump blue and yellow Dutch boy cookie jar, the red straw sticking up from Polly's drinking cup. He takes one last look around. Will he ever see these things again? He pulls from his pocket the single sock that he has brought along. He bunches it into a ball and sticks it in his mouth. He sits some more. He ponders his plan. 3 steps on the first day, 3 more on the second, down to the bottom on the third. At last he pushes himself up from the chair and, like a condemned man, takes the long, doomed walk to the cellar door. He opens the door. He takes 1 step forward. He pulls the door shut behind him and learns that his fear has missed the target. He was expecting darkness, yes, really dark darkness, but this is something else. This is darkness so absolute, so wickedly pure that he himself seems to have been wiped out. He holds his hand 1 inch before his face and positively cannot see it. He reaches for his opposite forearm, missing it on the first try, to reassure himself that he is still there. He squeezes the forearm and hopes that some of the light he has sponged up will come squirting out. It does not. He reaches behind for the door, for its smooth painted surface. His trembling fingers find the doorknob. Turn it, a voice inside his ear whispers. Turn it and go back. But that's what he tells his hand. And that's what he tells his hand. Turn it. But his hand is not listening. His hand is letting go, and now his whole body, contrary to all his wishes and good sense, is lowering itself to a seat on the first step. And he learns a second thing. He cannot forget the 3-day plan. He must do it all. Today, now, or never. He lowers himself one more step. 7 to go. One more step. 6 to go. One more. His silent scream probes for a weakness in the sock. One more. And the monster is out from behind the furnace now. He knows it. He feels it. The monster's in front of the furnace and is moving toward the stairway. The monster is inches in front of his face now. He can touch it if he reaches out or takes one more step. The scar is singing. He doesn't think about it. He just does it. 2 steps from the bottom, he turns and runs back up the stairs. In the dazzling light of the kitchen, he rips the sock from his mouth. He stands gasping over a chair. He thinks of the 2 steps he stopped short of. He has failed, flunked his own test. He thinks about it for several moments. He hears his mother's voice on the phone upstairs. He listens. He heads off to play with Polly. 4 days later, he goes back to school.